Alright, so sometimes it just pays to stay in town. What I couldn't get at Home Depot, what I didn't see at Home Depot, my local electrical supply house. Not Leviton, Cooper. Another name brand, but there it is. 4-wire plug end. See if we can't make an improvement on the cable connection. Alright, pretty straightforward again. This green one's going to be my ground, which is the round pin. And then L1 and L2 are going to be these two. This one we're not going to use in this particular setup. Okay, first thing I did was I cut back on this outer sheathing so I can expose some of this wire here because I don't want to use these used ends. And right there you can see there's actually damage to that insulator right there. So I'm going to cut back to where I'll be using virgin wire. Something I didn't show you was that when I was using my wire strippers here, there's a gauge. And since this is number 12 wire, I used the number 12 hole on the first cut that I made. I ended up ringing the conductor and actually took a couple of strands off. So the next one I used the 10 gauge hole, and that actually stripped this perfectly. Ringing the conductor is just a term that I remember from my trade school days, and that means when you strip the wire, if you actually cut into the conductors as you're rotating the cutter, they call that ringing the conductor, and that's not good to do. Now, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to flow some solder into this stranded wire to make it more like solid wire when I put it into these little compression connections on here. And then I'm going to undo this one and redo it. I'm going to recut those wires so that I know that the conductors aren't damaged, and flow solder on those too. Alright, so that's basically what I was going for. I don't know if the camera's going to focus on it or not, but I wanted to tin the ends so the solder, I kept the strands loose enough so the solder will flow in there and fill it in and make it more like a solid conductor on the ends where it's being clamped down into these compression type connections. Alright, so that's what it looks like now that I've finished it. And I'm happier with this, with the solder in there. I think the connections are going to be better. Alright, that side's done. Okay, I just pulled these wires out in preparation for remaking them, and I wanted to show you what I was kind of talking about. You can see right there in the center of this, there's a dimple where that screw was actually crushing down on the conductors. So it was just really putting pressure on that center part, and then as it squashed and flattened this out, you kind of lose some of that clamping force. That's going to be so critical in making a good transfer, especially as that connection heats up and cools down repeatedly during use. You can imagine when you're drawing an arc, that's when maximum current's going to be flowing through this connection. It's going to heat up, it's going to cause expansion, and then you stop welding and it's going to cool down, and that's going to be an ongoing process. And we don't want that developing into a bad connection. So we're going to try and do our best. Of course, you know, the biggest problem is, again, this is undersized wire, but we're hoping that we're going to be able to get away with it. Yep, real glad I redid this. Now the screw's not bottoming out because the conductor's not crushing as much. Voila, we're done. Alright, so time to put my welding skills to the test. This ought to be good. Anyways, so what I want to do is I want to weld up the broken handles from the Oliver backhoe, and I want to match up the broken parts. I want to make sure they go together the way that they came apart. That way I can kind of help keep the alignment somewhat right. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at each one and seeing if I can figure out which ones match up with which. And as luck would have it, I could pretty much figure that out. These almost look to me like they had been broken at some other point and re-welded maybe. But this is a good match right here. You can see it. So that, talking about those two staying together, these two are a little trickier. This one kind of matches up on the back side, but on the front it has this big gap right there. So that's why I think there was actually a void there to begin with. I think there was already an issue with the weld. And then this one, it seems like no matter how I line it up, I can't get, I mean, it almost looks kind of like a good match there. Not really though. maybe with a twist right there. But boy, that really doesn't match up on the back side well at all. So I think that was, I don't know what the deal was there. And here's one of the ones that didn't break. But yeah, that's an ugly looking weld on there. That's what makes me think that these had been re-welded. You can see all the spatter. They didn't bother really doing much in the way of cleaning that up. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to wire wheel these ends and edges up. Clean them up a bit. Alright, after cleaning it up, I then had to finagle a way to keep it steady and keep it together. And what I came up with was I took a pipe vise and I clamped the pipe vise down by putting a 2x4 underneath here down to the tabletop, and then I used another clamp to clamp this piece, and I've got the alignment pretty good. There's a little bit of a gap there, but that might actually work to my advantage as the filler metal goes in there. Hopefully it'll strengthen it. So now I think I'm ready to try and weld it. What I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and weld as much of this top and side as I can, and then let it cool down, and then reposition it in the vise. And of course by then it should be held together by that much of a weld that I won't have to worry about all these clamps. Alright, put on my welding shirt, protect my arms from spatter. I've got my gloves. I hope this is going to be a good ground here. I've got a 6011 stick in the stinger, and I got power hooked up, and I believe I've moved all my flammables away, except for the wooden wagon, of course, but I don't think we're gonna have a problem with that. I've got water. So next move, let me get the camera on a tripod. Okay, I've turned on my spigot and made sure I've got water just in case. And now, last bits of safety equipment. And the helmet. Alright. Oh, damn it. Wing nut that holds the helmet shield on the side there just fell off. It was too loose. Now I'm not going to spend the rest of the afternoon looking for where that wing nut fell down to, so I'm going to just put a regular nut on there to fix it. Of course now I can't get it to flip down with the knot of my head nicely, so that just adds another issue to deal with. Luckily I've got a new auto darkening helmet on the way. I ordered an auto darkening helmet. That's actually, I've been notified that it's been shipped by UPS, so for future projects I'll have a nice new helmet. Alright. Forgot I want to select my amperage. I'm going to try 100 amps. Really hard with this helmet working the way it is, rather poorly that is. Try 115 amps because the stick seems to be sticking quite a bit. Also managed to get the stick to things I don't want it to stick to. Part of the problem is I got the jitters. I've only done a quick arc on some steel plate like this to test this thing out. I never did any close, delicate work like this. What's happened is I think I've got the stick in the right location. I put the helmet down, and when I strike the arc, I'm like half an inch off. Try this again. Close. Arc established. It's sticking too badly. I try and break across it. I usually end up hitting the vise and sticking to that. Why is it sticking so bad? Try a higher current level. It's 145 amps. Between having to hold the helmet with my hand and doing this one-handed, and the thing's sticking as bad as it is, I'm about ready to give up. I'll readjust the camera angle so you can see what I'm trying to do. I just checked all my electrical connections and they're not getting even warm, so that's a good sign that my extension cord is holding up and not putting undue stress on any electrical parts in my house. So removed most of the flux off the first inch of that. Just flashed myself. In other words, I had the hood up and didn't intend to strike an arc, and I accidentally hit the stupid vise. I'm not getting a proper ground here on this thing. I think I'm going to wait until my auto darkening helmet comes in. It's going to be here in the next day or so. No, I didn't start a fire. I'm just wetting down the surrounding area a little bit now that I've decided to quit for today. Just in case any of those sparks or spatters went flying somewhere, and I want them to start a little dry fire back here later. That ought to do it. Oh well.